Most candidates taking the Cambridge Accounting 9706 exam lose incredibly easy, basically guaranteed marks when they hit the sources of finance for business entities questions. It happens every single year. But listen, after walking through this explainer together today, you are absolutely not going to be one of them. Welcome to our Cambridge Examiner Masterclass. I'm your master coach, and today we are going completely behind the curtain. We are going to decode the examiner's actual playbook, strip away all the guesswork, and reveal exactly what the people grading your papers are searching for. We'll be looking specifically at the academic benchmarks, the technical methodology, and the evaluation insights straight from the source. So grab your notes, get focused, and let's get into it.
Let's kick this off with the harsh truth, literally pulled right from the principal examiner report itself. It reads, "Answers are often too vague. Examiners want specific details." Think about that. This is the #1 reason candidates bleed marks on those complex, high-tariff 9 to 15 mark questions. Now, you might completely understand the fundamental difference between a short-term bank overdraft and issuing long-term equity shares. But if you answer the prompt in broad, generic strokes, your score is going to plummet. The stakes here are incredibly high. Let's look at command words for a second. There's a massive structural difference between analyze and evaluate, or explain versus to what extent. Analyze means digging into the mechanisms, whereas evaluate demands a judgment call. You have to prove that your knowledge applies to the specific constraints of the business entity right there in front of you.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our strategic roadmap for today's session. First, we are getting inside the examiner's mind. Second, the method mark strategy. Third, navigating examiner warnings. Fourth, the deconstruct, solve, evaluate model. And finally, mastering comparative analysis.
Section 1. Inside the examiner's mind. Unlocking the assessment objectives.
So, what exactly is Cambridge testing behind the scenes when they hand you a complex scenario about a business needing capital? They are targeting 3 distinct cognitive domains, also known as assessment objectives. First, knowledge and understanding, that's AO1. This is your foundation. Do you know the cold hard facts? Second, analysis, or AO2. Can you break the information down systematically? And third, evaluation, AO3. Can you make a justified recommendation? Let me tell you about 2 students I coached recently. We'll call them Alex and Sam. Alex is highly technical, right? Memorizes every formula, crushes AO1, but completely freezes on open-ended evaluation. Sam is the total opposite, a creative thinker who builds incredible arguments for AO3, but struggles with the structural precision of AO1 and AO2. To hit the top-tier marking bands, you cannot just be an Alex or a Sam. You have to demonstrate absolute competence across all 3 of these domains. If you just define terms and stop, you're capping your grade right at the bottom.
And this brings us to the ultimate golden rule of Cambridge exams. You must prioritize analytical depth over superficial breadth. The syllabus explicitly emphasizes that top-performing students exhibit connected, conceptual understanding that transfers to unfamiliar contexts. What does that actually mean for you in the exam hall? It means rote memorization simply won't save you. When Alex and Sam were debating a mock question yesterday, Alex wanted to list 10 generic facts about debentures. I had to step in and say, no, stop. Examiners don't want 10 shallow facts. They want you to take 3 highly relevant facts and analyze them deeply within the unfamiliar, specific context of the business entity presented in that specific paper. Quality and depth will beat quantity every single time.
Let's move on to Section 2, the method mark strategy. Earning marks for the process.
Have you ever wondered why brilliant students find multi-stage analysis so incredibly frustrating? It's almost always because they become utterly obsessed with the final answer. They totally ignore the fact that examiners award massive method marks for the actual process. When you are tackling examination questions on sources of finance, you have to follow this rigorous 6-step procedural framework. First, deconstruct the question. What is the command word? Second, extract relevant data from the stimulus. Third, select your analytical framework. Fourth, execute your analysis with clear step-by-step notation. Fifth, verify your results. And sixth, present your findings using precise terminology. Listen, by writing these steps out explicitly on your paper, you are basically locking in an insurance policy for method marks. Even if you punch the wrong number into your calculator in Step 4, a clearly documented Step 2 and Step 3 will still earn you credit. You get rewarded for your brain's systematic approach.
Now, executing that 6-step process requires some essential data interpretation skills. Cambridge wants to see you develop professional accounting skills, not just theoretical academic ones. You have to actively extract specific, nuanced details from dense texts and tables. You need to interpret the financial relationships between the data points, and then draw rock-solid, evidence-based conclusions. And please, look closely at that last bullet point.
Presentation conventions. Follow them strictly. Use proper headings, format your numbers clearly, annotate your workings where necessary. The examiners are actively scanning for this level of professional presentation. If your paper looks chaotic, you are going to lose the benefit of the doubt.
Section 3. Navigating examiner warnings. The top 3 mistakes.
All right, we are pulling this directly from the principal examiner reports to reveal the exact traps where students consistently bleed easy marks year after year. Let's do a quick spot the flaw exercise. Here are the top 3 warnings. Number 1, as we hammered home earlier, answers are too vague. Do not say a loan has interest. Say a 5-year bank loan at 8% fixed interest will increase the entity's gearing ratio to X%. Specific details. Number 2, forgetting to check format and presentation. Like we just talked about, a messy, unformatted block of text is an examiner's nightmare. And number 3, answers are not specific to the context given. This is huge. If the exam sets up a scenario about a small, family-owned retail business struggling with cash flow, and you write a generic answer about issuing millions of shares on the stock exchange like they are a massive multinational corporation, you completely failed the context test. You will score 0 on those application marks.
Warning, we have a major examiner alert on this slide. The reports reveal a massive recurring issue specifically in this Accounting 9706 unit. Candidates consistently confuse key terminology. Under the immense pressure of the ticking clock, it is incredibly easy to swap capital expenditure with revenue expenditure, or mix up ordinary shares with preference shares. The moment you use the wrong accounting term, you immediately signal a lack of fundamental knowledge, and the examiner instantly puts up their guard.
Now, before I give you the ultimate fix to this terminology trap, and before we hit the absolute hardest part of this paper, the evaluation stage, I need you to do something. If you are serious about mastering these strategies, you need to subscribe to the channel Ace the Exams IGCSE O and A levels right now. That's @Ace the Exam _IGCSE. Hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications so you never miss our weekly Cambridge breakthrough strategies. Trust me, you'll want this edge. Okay, back to the terminology fix. It is remarkably simple. Always define your terms before using them in extended responses. Seriously, take one sentence to clearly define the source of finance you are about to evaluate. Doing this anchors your entire response. It immediately proves to the examiner that your conceptual understanding is sound before you even launch into the complex math and multi-stage analysis.
Which brings us to Section 4, Deconstruct, Solve and Evaluate, the problem-solving mental model.
Once you have defined your terms and sidestepped those common examiner pitfalls, you need a bulletproof problem-solving mental model. This is for the hardest part of the exam, the extended, high-tariff, multi-stage analysis questions. We call this the Deconstruct, Solve, Evaluate framework. Look at the steps. First, run a 3-step question scan to identify the given information. What exact capital is needed? What is the time frame? And what are the entity's current constraints? Next, break the problem into logical chunks. Then solve it systematically, but don't just calculate blindly. Pause and check your numbers for reasonableness. If you calculate that a local bakery needs a $1 billion loan, you've dropped a decimal somewhere. Fix it. Finally, and this is where the money is, make justified recommendations. You have to take a stand. If the entity is choosing between 2 sources of finance, you must make a final call and justify exactly why it is the superior move based on the data you just solved for.
I want you to really pause and think about this next question. How do top-scoring candidates actually demonstrate evaluative thinking? We know the assessment framework comprises descriptive, analytical, and evaluative levels. Let's think back to our students Alex and Sam. Alex gets totally stuck in the descriptive and analytical levels. He tells the examiner what the data is, but not what it means for the future of the business. How do you push through to that highest order evaluation tier that Sam loves to live in?
You unlock it by actively deploying these highest order skills. Top candidates do something most students never think to do. They question the assumptions provided in the stimulus material. Is the interest rate guaranteed to stay the same? What if sales don't hit the projected forecast? Next, they consider different perspectives. For example, how might the current shareholders view a new source of finance that dilutes their control versus how a bank might view the increased gearing ratio? It's a completely different perspective. And finally, they justify every single decision with hard, undeniable evidence pulled directly from the text and tables. That is exactly what evaluative thinking looks like in practice. It's not just summarizing, it's weighing the evidence like a judge in a courtroom.
Section 5, Mastering Comparative Analysis. Securing the final evaluation marks.
When those higher-order assessment objectives demand that you evaluate alternatives and compare different approaches, this is the exact mechanical structure you need to use to secure those final elusive marks. True comparative analysis requires identifying similarities and differences. Let me tell you about a massive roadblock I see all the time. A student will write a whole paragraph listing the advantages of a bank loan. Then they start a new paragraph listing the disadvantages of a share issue. Guys, that is not an analysis. That is just writing two separate lists. True comparative analysis requires looking at the sources side by side, in the same breath, and explicitly contrasting their similarities and differences directly within the context of that specific business entity. You have to put them in the ring together and see which one wins.
To mechanically force yourself to write a perfect comparison, you need what I call the paragraph balance formula. Make sure your paragraphs meet these three requirements. First, use comparative connectives. Words like whereas, conversely, however, or on the other hand. These words act like giant neon signs pointing the examiner directly to your analysis marks. Second, support each of those comparisons with cold, hard evidence from the data table. Third, draw conclusions about relative importance. You need to confidently tell the examiner which factor actually matters most to this specific business right now and why it outweighs the other factors. Maybe maintaining control is more important to the family business than saving a bit on interest rates. Make that call and back it up.
Let's synthesize this entire masterclass and bring it all back to our foundational academic benchmark. Remember, apply a logical, structured reasoning and prioritize analytical depth. If you want to crush Cambridge exams, it comes down to three core pillars. Use the three-step question scan to extract data, use the paragraph balance formula to structure your arguments, and use a last 5 minutes review checklist to ensure your formatting is flawless and your recommendations are totally justified. Whether you are extracting data, building a table, or writing an extended evaluation paragraph, examiners are just looking for a systematic, evidence-based approach. Follow the structure, give them the depth they crave, and the marks will absolutely follow.
So I am going to leave you with this final provocative thought. Will you apply the Deconstruct, Solve, Evaluate framework on your very next past paper? Because knowing the strategy is only half the battle. Practice is what makes it permanent in the exam room. Take the examiner warnings we covered today. Pull up a Cambridge 9706 past paper and literally force yourself to prioritize analytical depth over superficial breadth. Before you go, crushing Cambridge exams requires consistent strategy. I want you to hit that subscribe button for Ace the Exam's IGCS O&A levels at acetheexam_IGCS right now. Turn on the notification bell so you get all our future exam hacks, and drop a comment below telling me your target grade for Accounting 9706. Claim it right now. Thank you for joining me for this Masterclass Explainer. Now get out there, study smart, and practice those specific details.